The apartment building stood like a relic from another time, its facade weathered by years of neglect. The hallways were dimly lit, with flickering bulbs casting eerie shadows that danced along the peeling wallpaper. There was an unsettling silence that permeated the building, interrupted only by the occasional creak of old wood or the distant hum of the elevator. Whispers of strange occurrences floated among the tenants, stories of unexplained noises and fleeting shadows that seemed to have a life of their own. Amid this backdrop, a young woman moved into the building, seeking a fresh start. She was determined to make the old apartment her own, filling it with the warmth and charm that belied its age. Yet, as she settled into her new life, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. At first, she dismissed it as mere paranoia, the result of adjusting to an unfamiliar place. But the sensation lingered, gnawing at the edges of her mind. Each night, as she tried to find solace in sleep, the shadows outside her window seemed to grow darker and more defined. The apartment, with its strange noises and cold drafts, began to feel less like a refuge and more like a place where unseen eyes tracked her every move. The first night she saw it, she chalked it up to her overactive imagination. A shadowy figure standing just beyond her window, an indistinct silhouette against the dark backdrop of the night. She shook her head, closed the curtains tightly, and convinced herself it was a trick of the light, perhaps a tree branch swaying in the wind or a shadow cast by a distant street lamp. But the figure returned, night after night, always in the same spot, unmoving and unsettling. Then came the tapping. Faint at first, a gentle, almost apologetic sound against the glass. She tried to ignore it, but the tapping grew more insistent, more demanding. Each night it seemed to get louder, echoing through the silence of her apartment and gnawing at her nerves. One particularly dark night, the air heavy with an unnatural stillness, she could bear it no longer. With a deep breath and heart pounding in her chest, she approached the window, her hands trembling as she grasped the curtain. She hesitated, then pulled it aside in one swift motion. There it was, the figure, standing inches from the glass, its face a blank canvas except for two glowing white eyes that bore into her soul. Fear gripped her, a cold, paralyzing terror that left her unable to scream. Terrified and unable to ignore the nightly visitations any longer, the young woman finally called the police. Her voice trembled as she described the shadowy figure with its glowing white eyes that appeared outside her window, the relentless tapping on the glass. She hoped they would find something, anything, to explain the horrors she had been experiencing. The police arrived promptly, their presence a small comfort amidst the fear that had taken root in her heart. They thoroughly inspected the area outside her window, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. But after a meticulous search, they found nothing unusual. No footprints, no sign of disturbance. They reassured her it was likely her imagination, a trick of the light, or the creaks and groans of the old building. For a moment, she clung to their words, finding solace in their skepticism. But the tapping continued, more insistent than before, and the shadowy figure returned, its glowing eyes penetrating the darkness. Each night, her fear escalated, her anxiety growing with every passing hour. The police might not believe her, but she knew what she had seen. The figure was real, and it was not going to leave her in peace. Weeks passed, each night bringing a fresh wave of terror. The constant tapping on the window and the unsettling presence of the shadowy figure became unbearable. Sleep eluded her, her waking hours filled with a persistent dread that gnawed at her sanity. The once charming apartment had become a prison of fear. Finally, she made the decision to move out. The relief of leaving the old apartment was palpable, a weight lifting from her shoulders. As she packed her belongings, her mind raced with thoughts of escape and the promise of peace. The constant anxiety had taken its toll, and she longed for a fresh start somewhere far from the haunting memories. As she was loading the last of her boxes, a neighbor approached her, an older woman with a knowing look in her eyes. "You're leaving?" the neighbor asked, her tone heavy with understanding. The young woman nodded, hesitant to share her ordeal. The neighbor sighed, a sadness in her voice. "You're not the first. The last tenant saw the same figure. Glowing eyes, tapping on the glass. She went missing shortly after moving out. The words sent a chill down her spine, the realization that she was part of a terrifying pattern. The fear lingered, even as she left the apartment behind, the shadowy figure and its sinister presence etched into her memory. Weeks passed, each night bringing a fresh wave of terror. The constant tapping on the window and the unsettling presence of the shadowy figure became unbearable. Sleep eluded her, her waking hours filled with a persistent dread that gnawed at her sanity. The once charming apartment had become a prison of fear. Finally, she made the decision to move out. The relief of leaving the old apartment was palpable, a weight lifting from her shoulders. As she packed her belongings, her mind raced with thoughts of escape and the promise of peace. The constant anxiety had taken its toll, and she longed for a fresh start somewhere far from the haunting memories. As she was loading the last of her boxes, a neighbor approached her, an older woman with a knowing look in her eyes. "You're leaving?" the neighbor asked, her tone heavy with understanding. The young woman nodded, hesitant to share her ordeal. The neighbor sighed, a sadness in her voice. "You're not the first. The last tenant saw the same figure. Glowing eyes, tapping on the glass. She went missing shortly after moving out." The words sent a chill down her spine, the realization that she was part of a terrifying pattern. The fear lingered, even as she left the apartment behind, the shadowy figure and its sinister presence etched into her memory. Years passed, and the young woman had moved on with her life, though the memory of the shadowy figure outside her window lingered like a dark cloud. She had tried to forget the eerie tapping and the glowing white eyes, but the fear had left an indelible mark on her psyche. Every now and then, she would catch herself glancing at windows, half expecting to see the figure staring back. One evening, as she relaxed in her new apartment, a news report caught her attention. The headline sent a chill down her spine, "Body found in walls of old apartment building." Her heart raced as she listened, the reporter detailing the discovery of a mummified body hidden within the walls of her former home. The police had determined that the body had been there for decades, long before she had ever lived there. The revelation was both shocking and horrifying. The shadowy figure, the tapping on the glass, it all made a twisted kind of sense now. The spirit of the person entombed in the walls had been trying to reach out, to be seen, to be acknowledged. The young woman shuddered, realizing that she had been living with a ghost, a restless soul trapped in the very fabric of the building. The fear she had felt was not just her imagination, it was a cry for help from beyond the grave. The revelation of the body in the walls left the young woman in a state of profound shock. The knowledge that the shadowy figure outside her window and the long-forgotten corpse were somehow connected haunted her every waking moment. The fear she had felt during those sleepless nights was now etched deeper into her mind, an ever-present shadow that refused to fade. Life went on, but she couldn't escape the memories of the apartment and its sinister secrets. Every creak of a floorboard, every flicker of a shadow, sent her heart racing. She found herself avoiding windows at night, unwilling to face the possibility of seeing those glowing white eyes again. The sense of unease clung to her, a constant reminder that some mysteries are never truly solved. Unanswered questions gnawed at her thoughts. Who was the person entombed in the walls? What had led to their tragic fate? And why had their restless spirit sought her out? The police had closed the case, satisfied with their findings, but for her, the story was far from over. The mystery of the shadowy figure remained unsolved, leaving her with a lingering fear that the past could reach out and touch her once more. In quiet moments, she would catch herself staring into the darkness, wondering if the figure was still out there, watching. The Whispering Woods, as they were known, stood remote and untouched by time. The forest was a tapestry of towering, ancient trees whose canopies intertwined to form a shadowy, almost oppressive curtain. An eerie silence blanketed the woods, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant call of an unseen creature. It was a silence that seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something, or someone, to disturb it. Into this unsettling atmosphere ventured a group of close friends, eager for a weekend of camping and adventure. They were an eclectic mix: the adventurous spirit, the skeptic, the storyteller, the cautious one, and the life of the party. Their laughter and chatter brought a temporary liveliness to the forest as they set up their campsite, pitching tents and gathering firewood. They were blissfully unaware of the forest's reputation, their spirits high and their minds filled with plans for ghost stories and stargazing. As night fell, the friends gathered around a roaring campfire, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows on the trees. The forest loomed around them, a silent sentinel to their merriment. Little did they know, the whispering woods had begun to stir, and their weekend of adventure was about to take a dark and twisted turn. The journey into the whispering woods was filled with laughter and anticipation. The friends arrived at the secluded campsite, a small clearing surrounded by towering trees that seemed to watch their every move. The air was crisp and cool, carrying the earthy scent of the forest floor. They wasted no time setting up camp, their practiced movements efficient and coordinated. Tents were pitched, sleeping bags unrolled, and a small fire pit was arranged in the center of their temporary home. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the forest began to transform. The vibrant colors of day faded into shades of twilight, and the eerie silence of the woods grew more pronounced. The friends gathered around the campfire, its flickering flames casting dancing shadows on the surrounding trees. The crackling of the fire was the only sound, breaking the otherwise oppressive quiet. They shared stories, some light-hearted and others tinged with the supernatural, each tale met with a mixture of laughter and shivers. The forest seemed to close in around them, the darkness thick and impenetrable beyond the reach of the fire's glow. Despite the eerie silence, the friends felt a sense of camaraderie and excitement, unaware of the whispers that would soon fill the air and change their lives forever. As the first night in the whispering woods unfolded, an unsettling change began to creep into the air. The friends, gathered around the dying embers of their campfire, started to hear faint whispers emanating from the depths of the forest. At first, they brushed it off as the wind rustling through the leaves or perhaps the echo of their own conversations. They laughed nervously, trying to dismiss the eerie sounds that seemed to float on the night breeze. But as the hours passed, the whispers grew louder and more distinct. They carried a chilling familiarity, calling out each friend's name in voices that sounded eerily like their own. The friends exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier bravado waning as the whispers became impossible to ignore. Shadows danced among the trees, and the oppressive silence of the woods amplified every haunting murmur. The tension among the group rose with each passing moment. What had begun as a night of fun and camaraderie was quickly descending into a nightmare. The whispers seemed to target their deepest fears and insecurities, growing more persistent and personal. Unease spread like wildfire, and the friends huddled closer together, their nervous laughter replaced by a palpable sense of dread. The forest, once a backdrop for their adventure, now felt like a living entity, intent on drawing them into its dark embrace. The whispers grew louder, their sinister tone impossible to ignore. One by one, the friends began to succumb to the eerie calls. It started with the adventurous spirit, who stood up abruptly, a glazed look in their eyes. Without a word, they wandered off into the darkness, drawn by the hauntingly familiar voice that seemed to beckon them deeper into the woods. The others called out, but their friend disappeared into the shadows, swallowed by the night. Panic set in as another friend, the skeptic, followed suit, leaving the safety of the campfire and venturing into the trees. The remaining friends huddled together, their fear palpable. Desperate to stop the cycle, they tried to hold on to each other, but the whispers were relentless, their pull irresistible. One after another, they wandered off, leaving only the cautious one and the life of the party behind. The two remaining friends frantically searched for the others, their calls echoing through the silent forest. They retraced steps, checked paths, but found nothing, no footprints, no signs of struggle, just an oppressive silence and the ever-present whispers. The forest seemed to close in around them, an impenetrable barrier hiding the fate of their lost friends. As the last friend stood alone, they realized the whispers were now calling their name, drawing them into the unknown. With trembling hands and a heart pounding in their chest, the last remaining friend made a desperate decision. They grabbed their phone, determined to capture the terrifying events unfolding around them. The screen flickered to life, casting a dim light that only heightened the sense of impending doom. The whispers were relentless now, a cacophony of eerie voices calling out names, taunting and beckoning. As they pressed record, the air grew colder, and the whispers seemed to gather around them, swirling like a malevolent storm. The distant screams of their friends echoed through the woods, each cry sending a shiver down their spine. The phone shook in their grip, capturing the disembodied voices and the haunting sounds of the forest. It was their only hope of proving what had happened, their last connection to the outside world. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and the darkness around them seemed to thicken. A sense of dread settled over them as they realized they were not alone. The voices took on a more threatening tone, the words twisting into a sinister promise of what was to come. The friends' breath hitched, their pulse racing as they felt a presence drawing closer, unseen but palpably there. The phone continued to record, the red light a small beacon in the overwhelming night. In those final moments, as the whispers closed in, the friend understood the true horror of the whispering woods. The recording captured their last, terrified breaths before silence once again claimed the forest, leaving only the phone as a witness to the nightmare. The hours stretched into an eternity, but finally, the distant sound of voices and the flicker of flashlights signaled the arrival of a search party. The last remaining friend, clutching their phone like a lifeline, stumbled out of the dark woods towards their rescuers. Exhaustion and fear had taken their toll, but relief washed over them as they saw the familiar faces of the search team. Despite their exhaustion, the friends' first words were a desperate plea for help in finding their missing companions. The search party combed through the forest, their shouts echoing through the trees, but no trace of the other friends was found. The eerie silence of the whispering woods seemed to swallow their efforts, leaving the searchers baffled and the last friend heartbroken. As dawn broke, the forest revealed no secrets, only an unsettling quiet. Back in the safety of civilization, the friend handed over their phone to the authorities, the recording their only proof of the nightmarish events. The playback was haunting, a cacophony of whispers calling out names, the distant screams of their friends, and the oppressive silence that followed. The final, chilling whisper, "You're next," sent shivers down the spine of everyone who heard it. The friend's account was met with skepticism, but the recording was undeniable. The fate of their friends remained a mystery, the whispering woods retaining its dark secrets, leaving the friend with a lingering fear that the whispers might one day call their name again. Back in the safety of their home, the last friend played the recording over and over, trying to make sense of the terror they had experienced. The whispers, the screams, it all felt like a nightmare. But the recording was real, a tangible reminder of the horrors of the whispering woods. They could hear the whispers growing louder, more insistent, the voices of their friends calling out in desperation. The final moments of the recording sent a chill down their spine. As the whispers faded, a single voice, clear and menacing, cut through the silence, "You're next." The chilling words echoed in the room, filling the friend with a sense of dread that refused to dissipate. The authorities were baffled, unable to provide any answers. The forest remained silent, its secrets hidden among the ancient trees. The friend tried to move on, but the memory of the woods and the haunting whisper lingered, a constant shadow over their life. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside the window brought back the terror. They couldn't shake the feeling that the whispering woods was not done with them, that the final whisper was a promise yet to be fulfilled. The fear followed them like a dark cloud, a relentless reminder that some horrors never truly end.